I'll start by telling a quick story because this will kind of give you an idea of what I feel like it's like in Medicare this year. When I was about 12 years old, I had two older brothers, and my parents had to go away. We lived out in the country in the middle of nowhere. This was in a small town in Utah. My parents had to go away because there had been, unfortunately, a death in the family, and they were going up to Idaho for this funeral, and they said, we're just going to leave the kids home. So we stayed home, and it was like this really exciting moment. It was like the first time in my life I can remember that there were like no parents in the house. And so my brothers, they got in the car. We pooled all the money that we had collected from collecting cans on the side of the road or whatever we did, and we went into town to go to a place that some of you are very familiar with and some of you might not know what it is. It's called Blockbuster Video. So we went to Blockbuster Video, and we decided we were going to rent all of these shows, these films, these movies that our parents would never let us watch. So that was my first introduction to Freddy Krueger and Friday the 13th. And it was, I mean, as a 12-year-old, I was terrified, right? Watching these shows, and of course, I was afraid to fall asleep because we're watching until like 4 o'clock in the morning, and if you fall asleep, then one of your brothers is going to sneak up behind you and wake you up and scare you and frighten you. So you're like, what does that have to do with Medicare? It has a lot to do with it, actually, in my opinion. So you're going to learn a lot about my opinions today, and my opinion is that when there is a lack of supervision, then all kinds of crazy stuff happens at home. And I think that that's kind of what we have seen this last year with CMS. We are seeing a kind of a lack of supervision that's leading to all kinds of craziness and to some really, really intense amount of regulation and some ideas and thoughts that probably, if mom and dad were at home, wouldn't be happening. So that's my opinion on some of the things that you're going to see today. And so I kind of shake my head at some of these things. Now, with that said, I've had the opportunity to do quite a bit of work to interact with CMS and interact with lawmakers. And I can tell you that their intentions are right. The intention to protect seniors and to ensure that people have access to good health care and have access to services at an affordable cost, the intention is pure. Now, the way that it is executed, or the things that and the policies that are put in place, oftentimes don't accomplish what the intention is. Okay, so what are some of the concerns about CMS? Well, you'll see that my biggest concern is that CMS doesn't know what you do and who you are and the impact that you have on the community and the seniors that you serve. They see the distribution of insurance as call centers, people who are dialing the heck out of our seniors, and they don't see the independent agent who lives and works in Reno and maybe works at and has a shift at a CVS or a Smith's or something and takes care of their neighbor and sees their neighbor at the grocery store. They don't see that work that you do. They see only the really loud and obnoxious things that are happening in Medicare. And so I think that as independent agents and independent brokers, we have an image problem. And we need to do more to share the story about what we do for seniors. When you sit down with someone in their home or in your office or at a booth or wherever it is, and you run all of their prescriptions, and you see how you can save them hundreds of dollars a month, sometimes thousands of dollars, or even help them to be able to afford food and medication, that's the story of what we do every day. And that's just one tiny piece of the story of what we do every day. Well, in CMS's eyes, only the state health insurance plan does that. Only SHIP does that. You don't do that. What you do is you dial people like crazy, you irritate them, you trick them because you want to make money. And it's so far from the reality of what exists out here. And so what can we do to improve our image? That's something that I think everyone in this room can participate in. If everyone in this room, just the few of us, spoke to a CMS regulator or to your representative in Congress or in the Senate, it's so easy to do, and shared with them the story of what you do. Share with them a real story. Tell them a real story of someone that you helped to save money on their prescriptions, or to get to the doctor that they need to see, or to get out of a plan that some lousy call center put them in that has a rebate but no drug plan. Tell them the real story. We need to improve our image because what we do is good. The second thing that concerns me is, and you'll see as we go through this, is that CMS has been quite political this year in doing things to protect people in power. And I am not meaning to be completely political up here and talk about political things, but you'll see the reality of the situation as we go through. Okay, so what is changing in 2025? Well, first, I'll say that there are three major changes that we're going to talk about today. First, the benefit redesign. I'm sure you've heard that the donut hole is going away. That's a great thing. We've seen so many people that have suffered through that. So there'll be three phases. We're going to see a change in the maximum out of pocket. And the maximum amount of, well, a change. There was no maximum out of pocket. Now there will be a maximum out of pocket. And we're also going to see something called copay smoothing. I just thought of a joke that I'm not going to share. Copay smoothing. All right. So where do we start? Well, let's start with the benefit redesign. So slide ahead there. Or let's talk about the deductible phase. So the benefit redesign is essentially we're going to remove the middle phase. We're going to have the annual deductible, the initial coverage, and the catastrophic coverage phases. But in catastrophic coverage phase, it's going to be a little different. So let's talk about the deductible phase. First, there is a $590 annual deductible next year. That deductible has exemptions in it. The exemptions are for certain vaccines and certain insulins. So insulins through all phases will be $35. There are some that don't qualify. I'm not sure which ones, but the majority will be $35 all the time, regardless of deductible phase. And most vaccines will be zero, regardless of the annual deductible phase. So that's nothing too new for us. We've had the deductible for a long time. Some plans choose not to have the deductible. What we're seeing on a lot of plans is that the deductible will apply to some phases and not to other phases. So you'll see that in a lot of plans where the more expensive brand name medications will probably have deductibles and the brand names will not. It'll vary by plan, but this is just some of the things that we're kind of seeing early on. So let's go to the initial coverage phase. In the initial coverage phase, in 2024, the true out-of-pocket maximum could be variable because it was based on what you were taking and what kind of rebates the drug plans had and that sort of, and all kinds of variables. On average, if someone hit the maximum, they spend about $3,400 to $3,600. But it could be, according to the rules, as high as $8,000. So you could have a true out-of-pocket as high as $8,000 in 2024. Very uncommon because of all the rebates on medications and all the things that would count towards. It wasn't just what the individual spent. It was all of these other parts that were being paid on their behalf, including rebates from drug companies that would reach that maximum out-of-pocket. But it could be as high as $8,000. Well, in 2025, it's set at $2,000. Now, this is because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And I'm sure that many of you already know all this, so I don't want to tell you things you already know. But the Inflation Reduction Act had a major impact to medications. And I love to see when our clients have an increase in benefits. And this is going to help a lot of people. A $2,000 maximum out-of-pocket on medications. We've never had a maximum out-of-pocket before. And at $2,000, I think that will impact quite a few people, way more than, the number of people that were hitting $3,400 was quite a few. I couldn't find actual numbers on that, but at $2,000, it will impact many, many more people. Now, it's simplified. It's simplified because in the past, your maximum out-of-pocket, your troop, counted things like manufacturer rebates on medications. So it could be other people were paying on your behalf for your medications, and that was counting towards your maximum out-of-pocket to get you through the phase. Because it wasn't really maximum out-of-pocket, it was just to get you through each phase. So drug rebates counted towards your maximum, towards the money that you had spent. Even though you didn't spend it, someone spent it on your behalf. Well, in 2025, it's going to be simplified. It's pretty much just what your beneficiary, what your client spends. What they spend is what counts towards that maximum out-of-pocket. The only very few exceptions are things like if there's a state pharmaceutical assistance program. We love our acronyms. I think SPAP is one of my favorites. I think it rolls off the tongue so nice, SPAP. So if there's a state pharmaceutical assistance program, then and they're paying on your behalf, then that will count towards the $2,000 max out of pocket. So there are some things that will help a beneficiary reach the $2,000, but mostly it's now going to be what they spend themselves. So that simplifies it. Now, through all of this, through all the phases, the most that a beneficiary is supposed to have to pay for their medication is 25%. So there could be and this is, it's on an actuarial basis, so it doesn't always work out perfectly, but it could be copays, it could be coinsurance, et cetera. But on average, they should not pay more than 25% for their medications. So that's kind of how the initial coverage phase is designed. And remember that to this point, they may have had in the deductible, they may have been paying just copays for their insulin, and the cost of insulin was actually higher, but only the copay will count towards their $2,000 max out of pocket. Last year, the money that was being spent on their behalf above the copay counted towards their true out of pocket, but it won't anymore. Okay, so let's now go to the catastrophic phase. In the catastrophic phase, I am going to show you the history on this because for me, this was very eye-opening to understand how much drug plans are changing in 2025 and why the costs are going up so much. So in 2023, you could see that the federal government the government covered 80%. Once you got through all those phases and you got to catastrophic coverage, the beneficiary is only paying 5%. The insurance company was only paying 15%. And Medicare, it was a reinsurance program, they were paying 80% of the cost if someone made it all the way through all phases. And then in 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act passed, and that's what changed these markers. So you can see the first change in 2023, well, 2023 was pretty standard. 2024, the government covered 80%. The insurance company now needed to cover 20%. So the insurance company liability increased by 5% in the catastrophic phase, and the beneficiaries went to zero. And that's what we have this year, which was a really nice bonus for our beneficiaries. If you did go all the way through and spend all of that money, when you get to catastrophic, you no longer had to pay anything. So if we go to the next slide, in 2025, how's it going to change? Well, the government is dropping their share to 20%, from 80% to 20%. And plans and manufacturers are supposed to cover 20%, and plans are going from 20% to 60% in catastrophic coverage. So think about the pressure here. We've got a maximum out of pocket that has dropped to $2,000, and when they hit the max, the insurance company now has to pay 60% of the cost instead of 20% of the cost. I mean, that's a big lift for insurance companies, right? A big change. Now, there's such a thing as applicable and non-applicable drugs. I didn't talk about non-applicable in the past, but the difference between, and if you see that in anything, applicable and non-applicable basically just means expensive and not expensive. Generics are generally in the non-applicable drugs, and brand names and expensive drugs are in the applicable drugs. So if it's a generic drug, then the government will pick up the 40%, and they don't ask for a drug manufacturer discount. The idea is to incentivize manufacturers to have lower prices, because if you are a lower priced medication and you qualify as a non-applicable, you don't have to pay a rebate as a drug manufacturer in this phase. So you can see the difference, how much that is changing. And I recently shared in a video that I shared on LinkedIn a comment that received some, I don't know what to say, some contention or backlash. I said insurance companies of themselves don't have money. And some people didn't like that, particularly one of my friends who's a doctor, because doctors sometimes have an oppositional relationship with an insurance company. But I said an insurance company doesn't of themselves have money. They have the money that the government gives them, and they have the money of premiums that are paid. So increasing benefits is a wonderful thing. But when you increase benefits, the money has to come from somewhere, right? So keep that in mind as we keep moving through here. Okay, let's talk about copay smoothing. Copay smoothing, this isn't a new pill that you're going to see advertised on TV. It allows beneficiaries to pay for their expected costs in a payment plan. So we're talking about the $2,000. Let's say that you have an expensive medication that's going to cost you $1,200. You're not going to hit the $2,000, but this medication is projected to cost you $1,200. I said $12,000, $1,200 over the course of the year. But the way the copays work, you have a percentage copay, so you're supposed to pay $600 in January, $600 in February, and then zero for the rest of the year. We're used to that, right? That's how it's been for a long time. Well, in 2025, the insurance company has to offer the beneficiary an option to have a payment plan. And the best way that I could describe this is, which is, I think, an honest appraisal, the insurance company has to give people a loan now. If it's going to cost if it's going to be expensive, they have to smooth it out over the whole year. And it's not just the 2,000. It's not like, oh, you're going to hit your 2,000. Let's take that 2,000, divide it by 12, and give you, a copay throughout the year. It could be 1,200. Let's take you've been prescribed a medication. It's projected to cost $1,200 a year. We're going to now charge you $100 a month. Now, there's a logistical issue here, right? As an insurance company, you now have to track money that's owed to you, bill everyone on a monthly basis to say you need to pay us each month on the debt that you incurred in January and February. For a beneficiary, it sure is a fantastic thing. For a beneficiary who had to come up with $600 in January and $600 in February, now they just have to pay $100 throughout the year. So this has to be presented at the pharmacy counter. So I'm not sure how this all works, and I can tell you that we are going to get a lot of calls in January of confused people, and then that call is probably going to turn to frustration in September when they say, "Why am I still being billed for something that happened in January?" Just thinking out loud. Yes, please.
As agents, would it be ethical for us to ask our clients to please don't take part in copay smoothing because this is going to complicate things?
I think that there is a place for that advice, as long as we're not hurting someone, of course. I mean, it's like advising someone on the insurance that they take, right? If they can afford to avoid copay smoothing, then they can avoid a headache, right? That's what I think. So I don't think that there's an issue there if we're not advising someone in a situation where it could hurt them or they can't afford it. So for those who really need this, it's a good thing. For those who could go without it, I think we should advise them to just pay the max copay so that they're done, and know that for the rest of the year now they'll be at a zero, right, when they hit their maximum out of pocket. So what about if they change insurance plans? Today you're on one plan, and tomorrow you move to another plan. So you could have a situation where someone makes a change to their insurance, and it won't be too common because PDP, how often does prescription drug plan make a change throughout the year? But a Medicare Advantage plan may be more common, right? You have someone on a Medicare Advantage plan, they now have COPD, they move to a special needs plan, but they have a debt from their previous plan. The debt may be inter-carrier, they've moved within the carrier. It may be to another carrier, they've moved to another carrier. And the carrier that no longer insures them still has to collect on debt. That's messy, right? So we are going to see some interesting things there, and if you have this understanding now, you'll be more prepared to answer some really bizarre questions that we may have next year. I'm going to pause there for a second. Any questions on copay smoothing? Please. The question is, what happens if they're in the middle of paying this debt and they change their prescriptions? That will happen too, and it's always based on, and I'm really, really happy about my life choices at this point. I'm glad I didn't choose to be an actuary. But someone has to figure out, each time that they come to the counter, is this an opportunity for copay smoothing based on all of these changes, prescription drug changes, plan changes, etc. So they could see a change to that, right? They could be on a payment plan based on them projected to take this for 4 months, but they only take it for 2 months, and somehow that projection has to change, and the billing has to change, and what's offered at the pharmacy counter has to change.
Will the maximum out-of-pocket of $2,000 still include what the insurance company pays?
Will the maximum out-of-pocket still include what the insurance company pays? No, it will not. It's almost truly what the beneficiary pays now.
That's how it is now, right?
In 2025. In 2024, what the insurance company or what the drug manufacturers, in some cases, count towards your your troop to move to another phase. But it will not in 2025. It'll pretty much just be what you as a beneficiary spend. Okay, let's go on to let's recap what we have. Really, that's not my handwriting, I promise. So benefit redesign, 3 phases. $590, just to recap, a $590 maximum out of pocket, $509 deductible. Initial coverage, 25% is the maximum that someone should have to spend on their prescriptions. Catastrophic coverage, they pay 0. That's super simplified. Much, much easier to explain, much easier to forecast people's medications. You know, as insurance agents, our addiction to Medicare.gov, what does it say? What is the benefit? You know, we'll still use it, I know, because it is a great tool. But it'll be much easier to forecast what their costs will be. Change in the maximum out of pocket. The MOOP, the maximum out of pocket, and the true out of pocket maximum are going to all be the same. It's $2,000. Copay smoothing. Part D plans have to give the loans, like I explained. They have to make sure that if someone wants to smooth out their copays over the year, they can. Okay, let's talk about some creditable coverage issues. You know, creditable is one of the funniest words in Medicare because everyone wants to say credible. I'm like, is that credible? I don't know if it's creditable, but I want to know if it's creditable. Does it credit? So creditable coverage issues. Because this new program is so strong and so robust, think about it, a $2,000 max out of pocket on prescriptions, that's better than almost every employer plan out there. Uh-oh, wait a minute. We've got all these people on employer plans. Is their coverage creditable now? Well, CMS came out and they said only for 2025. Because it's an election year. Only for 2025. We are going to have, you can use the simplified determination methodology. The simplified determination methodology is just 3 things. And with this methodology, like any drug plan, pretty much, is going to be considered creditable. So here's it. The health plan deductible has to be lower than $590. Okay? That could be a hurdle for some plans. Coverage, does the health plan cover brand name and prescription medication? I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find a drug plan that doesn't do that. 3, the actuarial value. Does the health plan cover at least 60% of the medications? Now, this is nowhere close to what the new drug plans cover, but it has to cover at least 60%. There's no talk about maximum out of pocket. The maximum out of pocket on your employer plan for your drug coverage could be $10,000, and they would say that's creditable. Now, the issue with that, if you go to the next slide there is a challenge to CMS on this because the law says that anyone eligible for Medicare must have coverage that is equal to Medicare Part D or better or face penalties. That's what the law says. So the question that has been raised is, can CMS circumvent the law and say, no, we're going to use this simplified methodology to determine, now for our beneficiaries and the ones, not just our beneficiaries, but for the people on group plans who are working, you know, thank goodness for them, because if you're on a group plan, you're probably on a group plan for a couple reasons. You may have a younger spouse or dependents that need coverage, and if you don't stay with that group plan, then you can't cover them, or you have to cover them at a much, much more expensive cost, right? So there is a huge concern here, and I'm happy for the people who have these who are on the many people who are 65 to 68 or what have you and are still working, that their coverage will be determined to be as good or equal to Medicare. But it is a question mark about how is CMS able to do this, because that's not what the law says, and CMS does not have more authority than the lawmaker, right? So that's a concern. So that leads to the ticking time bomb on my next slide here, which is the actuarial value of an employer health plan is already known. If it's from an insurance company, they know the actuarial value of the health plan. So so CMS is kicking the can down the road to 2026, and in 2026, unless a patch is done on this, then we're going to have all of these people who are on group health plans who are now accruing a penalty for not having prescription drug coverage that is equal to Medicare. I would imagine that some patch comes through in the next year to fix this, but I don't know. Right now we've got a temporary Band-Aid to protect those people, and in 2025 something needs to be done so that in 2026 they're not in a position, or in a world of hurt, I'll say. Okay, let's go to costs now. So the cost of the new program. So I shared with you earlier, if you increase benefits, that's a wonderful thing. But when you increase benefits, there are increased costs. You can't increase benefits without increasing costs. And this is one of the frustrations that I feel at times, is that I think we don't talk about the increased cost. And we always want to talk about increased benefits, and I want to talk about increased benefits, but what are the costs? So let's go to the next slide here. In the bid information for Part D plans came out on July 29th, so I had a lot of time to prepare for this. On July 29th, and this is the opening statement, and the reason I put this in here is because for me, this is one of my I've over the last several years really poured my heart into understanding what CMS does. And reading the CMS, I have the CMS newsroom is like a bookmark. That's how nerdy I've gotten on this. It's like a bookmark in my browser, right? So I'm reading, I'm checking every day, like what did they put out today? Reading. And sometimes I feel like CMS is just putting out propaganda. I'm like, what is this? Are you like independent, or are you from the office of the White House? And it's not. And in this example, it's talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. But if you go back to previous presidents, you'll see the same thing. Like, why is CMS putting out propaganda? Let me show you the history on plan costs. So if you look at 2020 through 2024. So this is the history on Part D costs. Now I'm talking about the full cost to offer a prescription drug plan. In this example, these are not Medicare Advantage plans, although Medicare Advantage plans would have probably the same cost structures, I'm sure. But this is just prescription drug plans. So every year, insurance companies, they bid to offer these prescription drug plans. And a bid says this is how much it will cost us to offer prescription drug plans to people with Medicare. And in 2020, even though I'm wearing glasses, I have to zoom in for myself. In 2020, the total cost was $43.29 per person per month. And then you see the breakout, $13.47 was the base beneficiary premium, and $29.82 was the Part D premium, and the $13.47 is what the government was supplementing. Does that make sense? And so the total cost was $43.29. So base beneficiary premium, $29.82. Government is supplementing with $13 per person per month. And you can see that rising. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act passed. At that point, we were at a total cost per month of $51.66. By the way, this graph right here, I took right off of CMS's website. So this is not my produced, this is directly from CMS. So, and this was their projection for 2024. So in 2022, we were at $51.66 per person per month. $19.51 per person was paid by the government, and $32.15 was being paid by beneficiaries. This is the base beneficiary premium, which is not exactly the average, but we could just, for simplification, call it the average, okay? And that's what the Part D penalty was based on, was the base beneficiary premium of $32.15. In 2023, we saw it go to 56, and then they projected that it would be 55 in 2024, but the actual ended up being $64.78, with $30 paid by the government and $34.70 on average paid by beneficiaries for a PDP. And the $34.70, as you know this year, is what the Part D, what the penalty is based on. So what is it going to in 2025? Well, this is a shocker. So let's go to the next slide here. It's going to $179.45 per person per month. $179. It's 2.77 times more expensive than 2024. It's 3.17 times more costly in 2023, and it's 3.5 times more expensive than drug plans were when the Inflation Reduction Act was introduced in 2022. So again, you add benefits, it's wonderful. There is a cost. So who's going to pay the cost? So, wow, okay, now you're thinking, we've got that drug plan that's very popular, that has a zero premium. What the heck is going to happen to that drug plan, right? What are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you who else has been thinking about that. Politicians in Washington, D.C. who are very frightened at all of these changes and the cost of them. So if we go to the next slide, the cost increase year over year is $114.67. So in the example of a zero premium PDP, it would go up to, if everything remained the same, it would go up to $114.67. Can you imagine? So if you're sitting in Washington, D.C., and you're looking at this saying, oh, in September, everyone's going to get their annual notice of change, and their $0 PDP is going to go up to $114, or their $35 PDP is going to go up to $150. I think you'd freak out, right? And that's what's happened. Actually, I was talking to John Green. He's no longer with NABIP, but he was one of our main, for many, many years, John has done incredible work for us on our behalf. And actually, this is a good time for a plug right here. If you're here, then I would assume that you probably participate in NABIP. At least you're participating here. Hopefully you have joined, because NABIP is the only voice in Washington of agents. There is no other voice for Medicare agents. No one else in Washington, D.C. is doing anything on your behalf that I know of other than NABIP. And if you are a member, thank you, and good for you. You're supporting the industry that supports your family and puts money, and puts food on the table in your home and helps you to own the home that you live in. But that's not enough. You also need to participate in the PAC. Donate money to the PAC. Because people like John Green, who for 20-something years has been in Washington, D.C., speaking on our behalf and doing everything he could to protect us, and the other attorneys that worked there for us, their money does not come from your NABIP dues. NABIP that alone just helps to support the organization. That comes from the PAC, the Political Action Committee. So if you're not donating to the PAC, I set myself up on a monthly. It doesn't hurt much to have a little monthly thing. I mean, even if it was $5 a month, if you did $5 a month and said, I'm going to put $5 a month to the NABIP PAC, then that supports our efforts in Washington to protect you. So make sure that you're doing both. You're part of NABIP and you're participating in the PAC. So, okay, I forgot where I was, but that's really, really critical. So so let's go to the next slide. So CMS announced a premium stabilization demonstration for 2025 only. For 2025 only, CMS says, instead of spending, what were we spending before? $30.08 per member. CMS says we're going to spend $112.59 per member per month just for 2025. I don't know why. Does anybody have any idea why they would do that in 2025? I don't know. But the base beneficiary premium is only going up by $2.08. Our beneficiaries are going to be protected from this cost increase. Now, it's a tough position for me to be in up here because I love the people we serve. My companies have helped over 60,000 people to enroll in a health or Medicare plan. And I'm happy for those people because I am their advocate. But I have a dual role here, right? I'm an advocate for my industry, I'm an advocate for the people that we serve, but I'm also a citizen of the United States of America. And so in essence, what CMS is doing is hiding the cost of this program for 1 year, because it would be very, very bad for all these people to receive these increases. Okay, let's just go to the next slide. So the base beneficiary premium, I'll get myself into too much trouble already. $36.78 is what the base beneficiary premium will be, a $2 increase instead of the $115 increase. So again, positive message for your members and those who are on a Medicare supplement with a prescription drug plan. Not a great message if you're one of the 50% of the population that pay taxes. So let's go to the next slide. What is a demonstration? Because CMS said we have a premium stabilization demonstration. Well, I had to research this because I was like, I don't know what a demonstration is. I was calling it a program, and someone said to me, it's not a program. You can't call it a program. It's a demonstration. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what a demonstration is. So a demonstration is when a government agency wants to test a new project of some kind. So let's say that CMS says, hey, we've got this new way that we're going to pay claims, or we're going to do billing. We're going to set up this new thing, and we're going to have some people use it as it's like an A/B test. We're going to A/B test this thing. We're going to have all these doctors on this program and all these other doctors on this program, and we're going to A/B test and see how it works. They've done a lot of this with like value-based services. Done a lot of demonstrations where they said, we're going to have all these doctors in Phoenix, Arizona, where there's a high population of seniors on this payment model, and if it works, then we're going to roll it out across everywhere. But a demonstration has to be budget neutral. That's what a demonstration, it's an A/B test. So if you go to my next slide, how budget neutral is a demonstration that pays $29.73 billion in prescription drug costs? So that again leads to another ticking time bomb. Ticking time bomb for 2026. What happens in 2026? Will PDPs have that massive increase? Will there be a legislative patch? What's going to happen in 2026? Well, stay tuned. Yes, please. So let me comment on that. So the question is, on here I showed, you go back to the other slide, it showed 22 million people on a prescription drug plan. But what about, 50, there was just a report that came out just last week saying this year Medicare Advantage has grown again to 54% of the population. Medicare Advantage plans do not get this demonstration. Medicare Advantage plans have to come up with the money on their own. So Medicare Advantage plan is not getting this money. Money is only for prescription drug plans. And the Medicare Advantage plans, sorry, Mary, you got to pay for this yourself for all your beneficiaries. So Medicare Advantage plans are not included in the demonstration. Yeah. So that Medicare Advantage plans will see more of an impact, and Medicare Advantage plans have to take on the cost of this increase per member per month, and prescription drug plans do not. Thank you for that question, because that's a really important point. So let's go to the challenge. So go ahead, one more slide here. So there is a challenge to CMS on this from Senator Crapo. That's right, it's Crapo. I know this because he is my father-in-law's senator, and I see him every year in the parade on the 4th of July in Idaho Falls. You should go. Idaho Falls is a great place for the 4th of July. And Senator Rogers, they sent a very well-worded letter to the U.S. Comptroller General's office asking, does CMS have the legal authority? Because this clearly increases the cost. CMS doesn't have the budget for this. It's not budget neutral. It's not a demonstration. And then they're asking, what budgetary analysis did CMS do? And what is the estimated impact on CMS's budget to offer this demonstration? So that expedited review is probably going on. It's hard to say what'll happen with that. We have seen that there have been quite a few challenges to CMS this year, like over the final rule, for example. And those challenges, almost everything that CMS has been challenged on in court this year, they have lost. So I don't know how this will go. And here we are in the middle of August with AEP looming, and we're not sure if this demonstration is legal and can stand, but all the prescription drug plans have submitted their bids. All the Medicare Advantage plans have submitted their bids. They have submitted and resubmitted and been sent back and resubmitted. I was talking to one of a friend at a carrier yesterday, and he said, oh man, it's been so hard with CMS this year. We submit bids, they send it back, they say you need to spend more money, you got to put more in, they give us more rebates, because in his words, in Washington, they are freaking out about the annual notice of changes that are going to come out in September and say, you lost your Medicare Advantage plan, Humana announced 10% reduction, Aetna announced 10% reduction in service area. I don't know if those things will actually happen because we're still waiting in the middle of August to hear what's going to happen on all these things. So they're freaking out and saying, here's more, here's another rebate, here's another rebate. So that leads me to my last slide here. Where does that leave us? Well, we got to keep our eye on that because that could have a major impact. If prescription drug plans increase by $114 a month, what does that mean to your beneficiaries that have a Medicare supplement? In some cases, it will double their monthly cost. So that is a massive impact, especially in rural areas, in rural Nevada, where there are a lot of people that they have one choice, or Medicare supplement or original Medicare, right? So keep an eye on that. I put in here, and I wasn't sure if I should say this word, but I couldn't help myself. CMS has been on a rampage. I mean, literally, when the cat's away, the mice will play. They've been on a rampage. I can't even tell you the amount of regulation that has come out from CMS this year. It has been dizzying. And it's not just dizzying to us, it's dizzying to our carrier partners, to providers, to doctors. It is dizzying. So there could be more things that happen between now and then. And as some of these things get struck down, CMS comes out with something else to try to rectify things. I make videos on this all the time, so if you're interested, follow me on LinkedIn. I try to make videos on key things that are coming out and keep people updated on what I know. Okay, so where does that leave us? It leaves us with a lot of confusion still, a lot of uncertainty. My personal opinion, I think that most of what I've shown you here is probably going to be what we have. I just think it's too late in the game for these massive, massive changes. I think that our beneficiaries with prescription drug plans are probably going to see that $2.08 increase, and that should probably be all that they see on prescription drug plans. We've heard from a lot of carriers that their prescription drug plans will remain pretty consistent because of that demonstration from CMS. So I don't expect a lot of changes there. The place where I expect to see a lot more changes on prescription drug plans is in the Medicare Advantage plan. But I don't think that that's going to slow the move from original Medicare to Medicare Advantage plans. The benefits on Medicare Advantage plans generally far outweigh staying with Medicare and a supplement for a lot of people. It makes a lot of sense financially. It doesn't make sense for everybody, and that's why we work with everything and everyone, and we remain independent as independent brokers. All of you do what's right for your members. I know that. I know that you help them enroll in plans that you're not even compensated for because you have their best interest at heart. And so that's the story that I started with, is what is the image that we have as independent brokers, and how can we tell our story? There's a prominent voice in Medicare right now is the Scan Health CEO, and he wrote an article in Forbes where he described what it was like for an independent agent to go into someone's home, sit down at their kitchen table, have that person bring out all their prescriptions and go through line by line, and how knowledgeable that agent was about what every prescription was and what the conditions were that it was prescribed for and what the dosages were, and how to help that person save money by switching from this pharmacy to that pharmacy, and all these other things that you do every day and you don't even think about and you don't get any credit for. It's time to change the image of the independent broker. And Sachin wrote a beautiful article in Forbes that described that and was widely shared among the broker community online. And that's the kind of stories that we need to tell more, and we need to tell them to the right people. So what can you do? Well, tell the story. Tell it to someone who needs to hear it. Tell it to a representative who works in Washington, D.C. It's very easy to get a hold of them. They want to talk to you. I've had many experiences with that where you just reach out to your representative. Look them up online. If you don't know, Google it. Contact their office. Last year I said, hey, I'm really, really worried about some of these marketing rules. And 2 days later, a representative from our senator's office came to one of our Medicare presentations and said, wow, it's amazing what you're doing. They want to know what you're doing. So tell your story. And then the second really, really important thing is put your money where your mouth is. If you're not a member of NABIP and you're not donating to the NABIP PAC, then you're not protecting your own livelihood in your own industry. So put your money where your mouth is and do the right thing. All right, guys, Thank you so much. Appreciate all your attention, and good luck out there this year. It's a wild jungle.
Thank you.